Hello again. The accusation is sometimes levelled at me that I have a rose-tinted vision of the past and that I have created a wholly mythical version of England as it was 50 or 60 years ago, one in which all the bad bits have been edited out and the good parts enhanced. Almost as though I've photoshopped the memories of the country from that time. This is, of course, a perfectly fair point. Old people are indeed prone to this kind of nostalgia for a non-existent lost paradise. It's nothing new. 2,500 years ago, we find in the Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes, it's written, "Do not ask why things were so much better in the old days." It's not an intelligent question. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 10 for those who want to check it out. Although, as my wife sometimes points out, quoting chapter and verse of scripture in that way does make me tend to sound a bit like a religious maniac or Dot Cotton off EastEnders. The fact remains, though, that there really are many undesirable things happening in this country which were extremely rare not so long ago. Take cousin marriages, for instance. Cousin marriages are a terrible idea, and although legal in Britain, are the object of a popular taboo as steering closer than is comfortable to incest. Very few marriages in Britain between white people are between cousins, roughly 1 in 25,000. The chief reason that cousin marriages are undesirable is that they hugely increase the chance of any offspring being sickly, dying young, or suffering from some genetic defect or other. Over half of all marriages in Britain between people of Pakistani heritage are between either first or second cousins. Approximately 3% of the British population is of Pakistani heritage, that is to say people who are either born in Pakistan or born to parents whose families have their origin in that country. The infant mortality rate among members of this community is double that of white British babies, as is the rate of stillbirth. That's, babies that are born dead. Babies born to parents of Pakistani heritage account for a third of all babies born with genetic defects in Britain. Reflect for a moment on this figure. Just 3% of the population have 33% of the babies with genetic defects. A baby born to parents of Pakistani heritage is roughly 10 times more likely to be born with genetic defects, which in many cases leads to disability and a shortened lifespan. This is why viewers will be very unlikely to know of any cousin marriages in their own families, and why it is so alarmingly common in England today. What about acid attacks, or vitriol throwing as it was known in Victorian England? Can anybody remember a case of this awful crime being committed in the 1970s, 80s, 1990s? On the other hand, it's now a regular feature in our newspapers. What about cases of tuberculosis? This had been eradicated by the 1970s along with diphtheria. They're back, of course. Then there's stabbing sprees, where a man goes wild in the street and sees how many people he can stab before he's shot by the police. Can anybody remember things like that happening? Anybody remember any stabbing sprees in the 1970s? Honour killings? Arranged marriages? The list of undesirable things which we now see routinely in England but were unheard of when most of us were growing up is a long one and growing by the day. Don't even get me started on grooming gangs, which are now a big thing in various parts of England, from Oxford and Luton to Rotherham. It is my belief that there really are certain bad things about in these days that we live in, which are so common as to pass almost unremarked, with which the country did not used to be afflicted. In short, these changes are not a product of the overactive imaginations and faulty memories of old people, but are instead genuine and demonstrably true things which are being seen now in a way that they once were not.